Do you guys ever feel like evil is winning in your life? Do you ever feel like the bad stuff is winning? The bad stuff that people do, they're getting away with it, right? The things that happen to us, the things that are unfair, the things that are mean, the stuff that we have to suffer through seems like it's winning. And sometimes we get into this mindset of going, well, I guess this is just the way my life's going to be. Anybody ever felt that way? Like, well, I guess this is it. I'm going to have to just suffer through this, and this must be either God's forgotten about me or God hates me and he's against me, right? That's a pretty legit feeling, right? That's something that many times we experience and we have to walk through. I don't have the clicker up here. I don't know. That's somewhere that can be found if you want to track along, either way. But what we're going to go through over the next few weeks is something where it seems like evil's winning. It seems like, how could this be part of God's plan? How can God do anything good out of what this guy's going to experience? And some of it is going to maybe feel like, oh, well, he kind of had that coming. But then a lot of it is going to be, oh, man, come on, God. Where were you there? Why? How could you let this happen? You ever ask God that? How could you let this happen? But then you get into a place where, all right, God, all right, I'm gonna believe in you. I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna believe that you've got a plan. How in the world are you gonna bring life or anything good out of what I'm experiencing right now? Thank you. So I want you to keep that in mind. Keep this question in mind. Is it possible for God to be at work in the midst of evil purposes? When the people around you, when circumstances around you are bad. And it's not like, oh, it's bad in like the good kind of way. It's just bad. It's unfair. It's cruel. Is it possible that God is at work in the midst of all of this? So over the last couple weeks, we've been talking about this guy, Jacob. All right? Well, Jacob had a bunch of sons. And one of his sons' names was Joseph. Now, Joseph was the second youngest. All right? And Joseph was clearly Jacob's favorite. Clearly. Like, he got everything going his way. And one of the clearest signs that Joseph was Jacob's favorite is Jacob got him a present. Jacob got him this coat that was made out of really nice material, and it was really bright and colorful. Imagine this day. For those of you who feel like you're not your parents' favorite, okay, this probably hasn't happened in your house this distinctly, where one day, Jacob calls all his kids together, kids, come here. I'm super excited. I have a little present. And everybody's getting all excited. They're like, oh, early Christmas in 2,000 years, right? But early, what are we going to get? What are we getting, Dad? What'd you get us? Did you get us a new saddle for our camel? Did you get us a new playhouse for out back? What's going on? And he goes, no. Better than that. This is something for only that only the most special would receive. And they probably start looking at each other, and they're like, well, I did rake the sand the other day. I did, do the dishes, and 2 nights in a row after it. It's probably me. Dad probably wants to thank me. Dad probably recognizes how hard I've been trying in school, learning all the pharaohs and things. And Jacob says, so right now I'd like to call Joseph. Come here, Joe. Come here. And they start looking around like, what's Joe been doing? Other than being Dad's favorite. Joe comes up to the front. Jacob pulls out this box and he gives it to him. Joseph opens it, and it's this beautiful coat. I mean, it is nice. And they're like, maybe the brothers at this point are like, okay. Joseph got a nice coat. Cool. Next. But at that point, Jacob says, all right, that's it. Rest of you guys, back out to the sheep. Imagine what this would do to you. Imagine if it were that clear. Now, some of you, you think that, one of your siblings is a favorite. I mean, imagine if it was that clear. I love Joseph more than any of the rest of you. I think that Joseph is more special than the rest of you. God blessed me when he gave me Joseph. Let this sink in. What are some of the words that come to mind? Don't say them out loud. What are some of these things that you go, how would you handle this, right? So Joseph is known to be his father's favorite. He got a coat, and then Joseph starts to have dreams. Now, the coat was from his dad, but the dreams, well, these dreams were that his brothers one day would all gather around and bow down to him. That had to make him popular, right? And then he has another dream where not only will his brothers bow down to him, but his mom and dad will one day bow to him. Even his mom and dad, even his dad wasn't all thrilled with that one, right? And his brother's like, who do you think you are, right? And so there is just all this. So not only is he dad's favorite now, he seems to be God's favorite. You guys did Would You Rather in the beginning today, and this can many times be our mindset in life of, well, I'm either going to have this or this, and let me think of what's going to put me in the best position, or how am I going to maneuver this to make this the best thing possible, or you'll look at it and you're like, neither one of those are good. I'm just going to lose at this. I'm going to suffer no matter which one. So which one would I rather? How about neither, right? And sometimes in life we get like that where we're just like, all right, let me try and maneuver myself and make things the best I can for myself. Or we just look at a situation and we go, there's no hope. There's no life. There's nothing good that's going to come out of this. So Joseph has these dreams. Joseph has this coat, this beautiful coat. And then a little bit, not too long after this, Joseph's brothers are out tending the sheep. First off, why wasn't Joseph off tending the sheep? Well, he's the favorite. He shouldn't have to go. So he's at home with dad. The brothers are off tending the sheep. And one day Jacob says to him, hey, Joe, I'm going to send you out to check on your brothers. Now, this wasn't, he hadn't heard from them in a while, and so maybe he wanted to make sure that they were okay, or maybe he wanted to be sure that they were doing their job and that the sheep were being handled properly and all that. But he says, hey, Joe, I'm going to send you out to your brothers, and I want you to check on them. So I want you to go get ready, and then once you're ready, I'll send you. And immediately Joseph says, I'm ready. It's like he's been waiting around for this opportunity to be like, I'll go see my brothers, right? So he gets ready and he says, I'm ready. And so Jacob sends him out. And it's interesting, this description in the Bible. It says that when he went and was looking for his brothers, that a local man in Shechem, right? They're no longer living there. So now they're living in Hebron, and so in Shechem, where the family had come from, he's out there looking for his brothers. And it says that a local man in Shechem noticed him wandering the countryside. Joseph's he's so just out of touch with this. He's literally just wandering the countryside. Just out there in the fields, wandering around. Brothers! Reuben, anybody? Right? And a local guy goes, hey, wait, who are you looking for? And he goes, hey, I'm looking for my brothers. They were supposed to be here grazing their sheep. And this guy, this random guy goes, oh, your brothers, they were here, and they're not here anymore, but I heard them talking, and they went to Dothan. Now, Dothan was a nearby area, but it wasn't that nearby. And so this random guy, as Joseph, the time that Joseph is there, wandering through the countryside, there's a guy who's there who knows now where his brothers are. So then he says, oh, thank you, and he wanders off out toward Dothan. As he's going out toward Dothan, it says that when his brothers saw him from far off, Joseph was still out in the distance, and his brothers were able to spot him. Why were they able to spot him? He's wearing this neon jacket, right? He's got this, this thing has batteries. It's like, right? And probably has a theme song. Joseph probably had a theme song, and he's walking. And his brothers see him from far off, and they're like, hey, here comes that snot-nosed little brother of ours, the one who's dead. Oh, Dad, I'm surprised Dad let him out of the house, wandering way out here. What if something happened to his precious son? From far off, they see Joseph. And all of these things about the coat, about how he's Dad's favorite, he has these dreams, so apparently he's God's favorite too. Well, we've had enough of that. And they begin to plot to kill him. Now, you might not get along with your brothers and sisters. Hopefully they aren't, or you aren't in your room being like, all right, how can we fit him in the washing machine? Put it on high and just spin the life out of him, right? Hopefully, right? And I'm not giving you ideas. I'm not just like, well, Jeff said. So they start to plot, and they start to determine, hey, we're going to kill it. We have had enough of this guy. Well, one of the brothers, Reuben, hears them talking, and is like, wait, hold on. He's our brother. We shouldn't kill him. If we kill him, let's just throw him in a well. See, they had these things called cisterns. It's a well, and they found one that was completely dry. And so they find this one, and they said, let's throw him in here. And so when Joseph walks up, they grab him, they rip his coat off him, and they throw him down in this hole. So while hey, let's not kill him, he's gonna die. But Reuben had this secret plan. Reuben said, okay, throw him in, but later I'll come back and I'll rescue him. So Reuben's playing a pretty important role here. And so they grab him, they throw him down in the well, and they just leave him. Well, he probably worked up quite an appetite, wrestling him to the ground and then throwing him down into the well. They're probably pretty tired, so he sat down to eat, right? They sit down and they're eating dinner, and they notice off in the distance this caravan of camels and horses and donkeys and things, these travelers. And they notice them out in the distance, and this is where Judah, one of the other brothers, goes, wait a minute, this is kind of a waste of money or a missed opportunity. See, why kill him? And then we have to cover up, the crime and all of this. Let's just sell him. Let's just get him out of our lives. And so they go. Imagine the hope in Joseph's heart when he hears their voices approaching the well, and then all of a sudden a rope is thrown down inside, and he's like, oh, okay, they were just messing with me. Any of you ever been punked by your older brother or sister, right? So he probably is like, okay, they were just messing with me. Oh, you got me, guys. All right, and they pull him up. He gets to the top of the well. They hand tie him, right? And they lead him over to this group of strangers, right? And they start negotiating a price for their brother. These guys are on their way to Egypt, a distant land, a far-off land. So far, Joseph, minding his own business, kinda. Blessed by his dad, seemingly blessed by God, but all of this has turned to hatred from his brothers. And his brothers are hurting him, and now his brothers are selling him into slavery. And this group of travelers are headed for Egypt. What must Joseph be thinking at this point? Joseph loved God. He was raised to praise Yahweh. He knew who God was. He had seen the blessings of God on his family. Remember, this is the guy who came from the line of Abraham and from Isaac and his father Jacob. I mean, these guys knew God. These guys saw God move in huge ways. And then we get to Joseph. And it all just seems to go, pfft. You ever feel like that in life? Seems like, hey, you got all these people around you who are just so blessed. You've got all these people around you who it seems to be going, and maybe your family, oh, well, my family, I come from a good Christian home and all of these things, and then your life just seems to go in the tank. Joseph is now being sold into slavery in a foreign country. We can't even wrap our imaginations around that. Where was God in this? I imagine that this is one of those things where Joseph had to have been going, what did I do? Maybe this morning you're in a place of going, what did I do? How could God be at work in the midst of all this evil, in the midst of all this hatred, in the midst of the stuff that people were doing to Joseph? How could this be something God is doing? Before they threw him down in the well, they tore his coat off him. So they had that still. And so they sold Joseph, and the traders head off down the road, and they're on their way to Egypt. Well, now they have to explain their brother's disappearance. And so they take the coat, they slaughter a goat, and they dip the coat in the blood. They tear it up, make it look like he's been attacked by some horrible animal. Somewhere along it, remember he had a brother who kind of stepped in to save his life? Remember Reuben? I'm not sure where Reuben was at this point. Maybe Reuben, once he convinced them, hey, don't kill him, let's just throw him in the well. Maybe Reuben went off to it was his shift with the sheep. And so he was away from them. And so Reuben comes back and finds out what his brothers just did. And so now his plan to come back and save Joseph, gone. This is that part in the movie where you see the star, he drops to his knees, and there's the overhead shot that pans up, and he's like, no, right? He's really upset. He was like, this is not the plan. Oh no, what have we done? They dip the coat in the goat's blood, they tear it up, and they send it back to their father. They don't travel back to see Jacob, to break the news to him personally. They don't go home to mourn their brother and say, look at what we found. This is awful, what a tragedy. They send it back, they FedEx it back to Jacob, right? He just gets it delivered to him. And it has a note. We found this, Father. Isn't this the coat that belonged to your son Joseph? These are some cold dudes. They don't say, isn't this our brother Jacob's coat? They go, they're playing dumb anyway, but isn't this your son's coat? Like they want nothing to do with it. They have separated themselves completely. The depth of hatred that these guys have for their brother has led them to this just unthinkable act. Jacob goes into mourning, and he's grieving, and it says that every time he thinks about it, he just breaks down into tears and he wails. The sorrows of a dad who lost his son, his favorite son, which probably didn't make things any better for the rest of the brothers, right? Oh, would he mourn like that for me? Probably not. Meanwhile, the traders that bought Joseph arrive in Egypt and goes through the process of selling him. See, a human just being used for profit and for gain. I mean, we have some of that we have learned about in our country, and ways that and how awful and devastating that was. This is something that had gone on for forever. And Joseph had been sold to this guy named Potiphar. Now, Potiphar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the king of Egypt. And this guy was the captain of the guard. He was the most important guy for Pharaoh. Now, let's take a look at some of the chance things that have happened in this story, right? The chance events. The things that, wow, that just, how weird. One, Joseph has dreams, right? That say his brothers and his mom and dad are going to bow to him and worship him. He's given this coat, which seems to only make things worse, right? He's given this coat. Then Jacob sends Joseph out to check on his brothers. At some random time, just goes, hey, haven't heard from your brothers in a while. Why don't you go and see what's going on? There's this random guy who's out there who is able to direct him when he doesn't know how to find his brothers. There's this random guy who's out there and able to send him to be able to find his brothers. That his brothers are in a place where they can see him from a long way off, and it gives them time to plan. He didn't sneak up on them. He didn't surprise. They were able to think through how they were going to get rid of him. Reuben convinces his brothers not to kill Joseph. The fact that he was able to convince them of that. That then this random caravan headed for Egypt shows up and wants to buy Joseph. That they're able to sell him. That he goes and he's being taken to a distant land. That then Joseph is sold in Egypt to the captain of the guard for Pharaoh. The highest officer in the land. I mean, he's the one that, he's an important guy. All these things can seem so random. And in our lives, there may be things in your life, there are things in your life that may seem so random. That may seem so, well, why is this happening? It may even seem like you look at those things and, well, that's what you look at to say that God's forgotten about you. That God doesn't care about you. That God couldn't possibly have a plan, because look at this list of random things. Some of them horrible things. And you look at those things and you go, where's God? Could God possibly do anything about that? And here's the truth that I want you to wrestle with, and this is going to be a wrestle, okay? And I hope you'll give this some thought and some consideration. That when God has a plan, that there is nothing that people could do, that people could scheme, that people could threaten, that threatens that plan, that could thwart, there's a word for you, that could thwart that plan. Do you believe that in your life? That if you're seeking God, and as you seek God, and as you're making yourself available to God, there may be things that you're like, it's not fair. I don't want this to happen. I shouldn't have to go through this. All of that may be true. Okay, God's not saying, oh, come on. Sold into slavery, be happy about it. Quit your complaining. That's not God's heart for you. God's heart for you is life. And that his love and compassion would be known by you. But how do you feel when things go wrong, when it's not fair, when stuff is bad? Do you believe that that screws up God's plan? Do you look at the bad stuff in your life and go, oh, well, nothing God's going to be able to do about that? And that is one of the things that I love about Scripture, is that it is consistently, man, people walking through life and going through really tough stuff. Some of it by their own doing. I mean, there's the reality that we sometimes bring it on ourselves, right? But go through really tough stuff, and yet the mercy and the compassion and the grace of God is always ready to be given. Do you believe that that's true? I read this quote this week that to me was really powerful. One of the most potentially frightening things. Let me find it, sorry. One of the most potentially frightening aspects of being a Christian is knowing that when you put your trust in Jesus, all of hell takes arms against you, intending evil upon your life. And yet what trumps that fear and evil is knowing that no matter what comes, God is the master weaver. He takes what was intended for evil and reweaves it for good. It could be really scary to be like, wait a minute, so if I stand for Jesus, if I put my faith in Jesus, hell's coming after me? Yeah. And that would be terrifying if it was, so, Kate, good luck with hell. Hey, Nathaniel, hope you're a strong guy. Hey, Tate, I hope you got it all together because hell's coming, right? That would be absolutely terrifying, and it would make any of us be like, no way. I'll do it on my own. But what trumps that fear is the power of God. The fact that no matter what comes, God is the master weaver. In Corinthians, Paul said it's like he works all things together for good. The great stuff and the horrible stuff, he works it all together for good. Do you believe that? Does your faith allow you to have peace even when you're being wronged? Even when everything's going wrong, does the faith that you have in God allow you to have peace in that moment? And if not, why? What are you believing about God? What are you believing about that evil and about the power that that evil has? But are you able to have peace even when everything is going wrong? And think about something that you're facing right now. And there's a bunch of stuff in this room. It's all different. Who are you believing God to be? What kind of control are you believing that the bad stuff around you is able to have in your life? And what do you believe God could do about it? Joseph is taken from his home, taken to a foreign country, and sold into slavery. That's where we're stopping today. I'll give you a clue. He's a slave for 13 years. What must have those 13 years felt like when it comes to the goodness of God? And I want to encourage you to take this to God. Take whatever you may be facing right now, whatever you may be wrestling with. What do you believe God is able to do? What have you given up on and just went, well, I guess my life's just going to stink? What do you believe God is able to do and is ready to do if you'll allow him and you'll continue to walk in faith? God, we come to you desperately needing you. Some of us clearly desperately needing you, and others we think we're doing okay, but God, make us aware of how desperate we really are. And I pray that you would work in our hearts and give us the strength that doesn't come from us. It doesn't come from making up our mind or being brave. God, it only comes from you. God, give us your strength to walk in the truth of who you are. And that whatever we may be facing, to trust that no matter how evil it gets, it never overcomes you. It never overwhelms you. It never thwarts your plan. And so, God, I pray that you would help us to walk in the truth of the love and the perfection of your plan and your ability to reweave our story and to bring life out of the most desperate situations. We love you, God, in Jesus' name. Amen.